Simon and the All Forgiving Collective. So yesterday's was committed on December the 17th last year. This confession goes back to 1970, so another one from the archives here, although it's fresh for us. I was 15, says Simon the Pie Man, home for the summer holidays and reluctantly working in my dad's bakery. Having concluded the chances of extracting pocket money from my old man without some graft from me being virtually non-existent, I'd agreed to do 2 weeks' work. It was a very well-known and established bakery with a shop and tea rooms below. The bakery churned out a huge variety of goods. Many of these products were a pain to work on and were subject to a high degree of quality control, aka my old man. I lost count of the number of times I had my eclairs rejected. Too short, too long, not enough cream, badly dipped. You name it, I got it wrong for some reason. So it was with some relief that my father put me in charge of donuts. Now, I don't know how technology has altered the course of donut production over the last 40 years, but back then it was a manual process. The jammer was connected to a one-way pump, which was attached to a lever. On the opposite side was what I can only describe as the injector. The technique was to prime the injector by pumping the lever a few times, press it firmly into the donut, and then pump. This injected a good heaped teaspoonful of jam right into the centre of the donut. Hey presto, job done.
Needing a donut now.
Sounding good, isn't it, really? One morning, having carefully produced about 12 dozen donuts, I found myself with one donut left and rather too much jam remaining. I know you're ahead of me. There wasn't really enough to scoop out and put it back into the jam barrel. So what to do with the excess jam? Bit of a dilemma. So spiking the donut as usual, I gave it a pump. And then another, and another, and another. After about 5 or 6 pumps, the donut started to expand. I extracted the injector and jam started to ooze out. I quickly plugged the hole with a piece of raw dough and carefully placed this last incredibly large donut on top of all the others. It was a little bit deformed, but it was huge and magnificent. I then proceeded to deliver the tray of donuts downstairs to the shop. Weaving my way through the busy tea rooms, I heard this voice, alarmingly reminiscent of Dame Edith Evans. Ask your parents. Actually, ask your grandparents.
Yes, I was going to say.
Call out loudly and clearly, cutting through the general hubbub. Young man, be so kind as to bring me one of your donuts, please. I'm imagining that's Dame Edith Evans. I haven't checked something like that.
Yeah.
I stopped in my tracks and turned. Sitting alone at a small table in an alcove was what I could only describe as a rather intimidating, serious-looking lady of a certain age. She was what I suppose one might describe as an old English eccentric. Half-moon glasses, heavy tweed suit, brogue shoes, feather hat, and her neck and shoulders draped in faux fur and pearls. It's like Elaine Page, isn't it, really, on a standard Sunday? Not being my... Sorry, that's Elaine Page. OBE.
Yeah.
Not being my job to serve customers, I frantically looked round for some assistance. Luckily, Mary, one of the waitresses, noticed my predicament. I'm imagining Mary now being played by Lily James, I think, in this particular role. Noticed my predicament and trotted over to my lady's table. "Can I help you, madam?" Mary asked earnestly. "Yes, you may," replied the lady. "Tell that young man to bring me one of his donuts." "Let me fetch one for you," said Mary, and with that she walked over, tongs in hand. "Anyone in particular?" Mary asked. "I'll have that particularly large one on top," she ordered.
Really?
Before I could reply, Mary grabbed the somewhat pregnant-looking donut from the pile, turned and then returned to the table. For a moment I thought about trying to say something, but I couldn't think of what to say, so I moved quickly, wanting to make myself absent, but also wanting to see what happened next. Still clutching my tray of remaining donuts and trying to appear as innocent as possible, I peered round the corner just in time to see the dame pick up and examine her donut. Then, as she slowly looked round to make sure no one was looking, she took a large bite. It's hard to describe precisely the next few minutes of carnage. The jam, obviously under some considerable pressure and taking the path of least resistance, exploded upwards and outwards in a quite spectacular fashion. If I hadn't witnessed with my own eyes, I would never have believed that a preserve could cause quite so much damage. Her entire face, glasses and feather hat literally dripped with bright red raspberry jam. Some had even squirted higher and over her shoulder and was slowly sliding down the wall behind her like a scene from Dexter. With an increasing level of horror, I could see that the fur had taken the brunt of the explosion, now more closely resembling fresh roadkill rather than a highly questionable fashion accessory. The whole scene brought to mind something out of a slasher movie. Dear young Mary, who is Lily James, remember, flew to the rescue, napkins and cloth in hand, and attempted to clear up as much as she could. The dame looked up at the poor flustered waitress and with an extraordinary degree of understatement said, "Somewhat generous with the jam, don't you think?" Needless to say, I made myself scarce and headed back upstairs. Some minutes later, I sensed my father standing behind me. "A word, please," he said, pointing to his office. "Do I take it you had something to do with that donut incident downstairs?" he asked. "What incident?" I replied somewhat pathetically. "The incident with Lady Appleby Blower," came the sharp reply. "Lady Appleby Blower is an old and valued customer, and I have spent the last 10 minutes doing my best to apologise for the excessive jam in her donut," a phrase I found very funny. And have done ever since.
Goodness.
That and having to contribute 10 shillings towards her dry cleaning bill. Asked your parents again. "What have you got to say for yourself?" he barked. "Well, I might have put in an extra squirt or two," I stammered. He gave me a long, hard stare, and then, quite suddenly, a little smile played on his lips. "Well, she's the most insufferable woman. Don't do it again, and I'm deducting 10 shillings from your wages to pay for the dry cleaning and go somewhere towards meeting the cost of wasting my jam. Anyway," and he left. So nearly 50 years on, I finally seek forgiveness, not from my father, who, bless him, has long since iced his last bun, nor indeed from Lady Appleby Blower. I do, however, seek forgiveness from dear young innocent Mary, who had not only to clear up the mess and incur the wrath of Lady A.B., but also receive a thoroughly undeserved dressing down from my father. Doubtless for the sake of appearances, I never did own up to her, despite more than a couple of very cool stares when I next made a downstairs visit. So, dear collective, I hope you will see this as nothing more than a teenage prank, a result of boredom and youthful exuberance, plus a touch of cowardice for not owning up to dear Lily James. Okay, well, you knew exactly where it was heading. It just so happened that it was Lady Appleby Blower. Who knew? Sister Bobby.
What a lovely, well-written story that was.
Nice,
that was
wasn't it?
gorgeous. Yes, Simon the Pieman, so well done for that. What I do love
I
is
might
your
submit
dad.
that for the 500 words competition. It's not too late.
You need to do a recount, I think. Your dad is fantastic. I love your dad. Your dad is salt of the earth. And, of course, he gave you what you needed, which was a good telling off, but also understood your sense of fun. I always think there's not enough jam in a donut. So I think 1 teaspoonful enough.
If you knew it was coming, that would still be the greatest donut ever if you were prepared.
Yeah, what surprised me about Dame Appleby Blower is I thought she was the kind of woman to actually cut it. I mean, we all know you bite into a donut, that's half the fun, is it catching the jam, dribbling down your chin. So I thought she was going to be a cutter and a cake forker. So I love her even more, the fact that she went for it in the traditional way. But I think you got your comeuppance, you got told off. I think this time, because it's the little, what's the waitress's name?
Lily
So it was
James.
Lily. I think she'll forgive you. She'll be fine. She obviously enjoyed the fun. You're forgiven.
Brother Matthew.
Well, here's the thing. This is very much a sort of like a Buster Keaton movie. This really, isn't it? With the jam all over the face, a very great visual gag. But we would have all loved to have had that particular donut. I'm with Bobby on this. There's far too little jam in my donuts, and I would definitely be going for one of these. What a joy to be alive when you get a donut full of jam. It's like when you get a Kit Kat and it's 100% chocolate. It's like, oh, this is so heaven. I definitely have got, and my guess is there will have been customers there going, oh, we are coming back here and we are having one of those donuts with all the jam in it. So nothing to forgive, because I'll bet there's been queues round the block. When can I get the exploding donut?